Okay. Hey guys. Been a long. Oh, let's shut up. Smosh. Okay. Hey guys. It's been a long time since I've done a stream about Movelist modding, and there's been some requests to do one again because the quality sucked because I don't know how to stream. Y'all are some hater ass bitches. Anyway, so what we're gonna do is kind of just redo the last stream where it's kind of going over the basics, going over the resources, and then I'll show you how to copy like a move at large, and we'll go from there. No. Okay, there we go. We don't need volume because we're just doing stuff. All right. So, I'm gonna just select some characters here. Main things you'll need to Movelist mod is Scuffle. And ooh, I don't think I have Scuffle in my thing, do I? No. So I'll put Scuffle in here because I've got this. Let me make a... Put that there, and then I've got Scuffle somewhere in my life. Gaming, Soul Calibur 6. This guy. No, you son of a bitch. Okay, and then we also need... I need to like actually create a new release of this. So I won't do that yet, but this little Movelist viewer thing that I made is also pretty helpful at times. Okay. So anyway, you need Scuffle. That's going to be in my modding resources folder. Check the description for that because it's there. That's going to be this folder here. It's constantly updated by me. Mostly just this general notes guy here. Has a lot of just like common scripts that you can use to identify certain things. Like this is a frame check. So I don't know why it has two of those. That's wrong. There you go. Oh no, that was right actually. Just kidding. But yeah, so this is like, this right here is a frame check. So it's saying if the frame is 0, 1, then it hits this check. Otherwise it jumps to whatever the pointer goes to. But yeah, lots of useful things in here. Character IDs, etc. And then at the bottom it's got some common hit effects and stuff. Just, it's basically my dump for all of the good stuff. Anyway, okay. So yeah, Scuffle is going to be the main thing in there. You're going to want to go to Advanced Tools and Move Editor or Viewer. What are they? Viewer. I don't know why they call it a viewer because it can't edit. Which is this. This will automatically populate the attack that you do in battle and spit out the frame data and stuff. So it's a super nice tool to have in general. But let's see. Let's edit. I don't know, something simple. Let's do 4K. 4K simple enough. So for Leisha, her 4K, the move ID is 343. Not really something that you'll need to know, but that's where you'll find that if you're wanting to like add a switch to something so it does multiple things in one, like that attack. You can see it switches through 3 different move IDs in one go. And that's just telling it that when you get to frame 26, for example, it goes from 423, telling it here to go to 424. Anyway, I'm going to try to stop getting off track because I'm just going over the basics first. Anyway, so 4K is ID 343 right there. You can also click on these arrows to just kind of cycle through stuff, but it's all in hex. So until you learn how to like read that, it's a little awkward. This first tab here is going to be the move setup. This is where the game is told what animations to play, or this is used for transition or blending. It's also animation. So these first 2 bytes are the animation ID, which for 4K, it's referring to animation 941 in Leisha's move list, or her animation list. And then these 2 bytes are saying what frame in that animation that it's going to be starting with. So for this one, it starts at 0, but you can start it at frame 10, or you can actually do -10, and that'll say it won't do anything for the first 10 frames, and then it'll start playing. So you can do that in kind of a transitional setting. I don't know offhand any that I have that for, but it is helpful at times. It's referring to animation 88. I'm just a big dumb idiot and scrolled and didn't know. Anyway, not really relevant. These are kind of unknown even by me. I don't know exactly what they do. I know this one does something funny to their shoulders. Like I'll change it to what it, I guess kind of hard to tell with her neutral animation, but it like makes the shoulders have a weird something or other going on. I don't understand it. I know Taki uses it a lot, but for most you just want them blank. And then this is a float value that's got something to do with weapon or motion. This is very rarely anything other than 100%. So again, you can basically just ignore that for the most part. If you happen to figure out what it does, let me know. And this is going to be the animation speed. So that'll tell the game how fast to play the animation. It doesn't change anything else. So like hitboxes, everything is unrelated to this value here. But this can be useful. I use it a lot in the transitional level here. But otherwise, most attacks will always be 100% there, and then use the actual script values for animation override, which are here. So it'll look something like this. This is just referring to the script function, and then this is the animation speed, which is a completely different value from this. I don't necessarily know what this does, though I know that 5640 is 100%. So I just go from there and kind of move up or down and play with it until I think it looks good. Anyway, so this block here repeats exactly for the transition here. But whoever developed Scuffle made a line break here. I don't know why, but it's the same exact thing. So I could paste that there and it would transition, or it would be able to transition from this to this, but you have to actually use the transition line. Right here. And we'll go over that later, I guess, maybe. These blocks here, again, largely unused. If something uses it, I don't know what or why. This here is the move speed, again, mostly unused, but this does speed up like the entire thing, which can be fun to play around with. But yeah, again, you'll mostly just want to keep that at 100. Oh, actually, this block here, this here, and this here for the animations. I forget, this is the max frame that it'll play. So if I set that to 10, it'll stop at frame 10, which is useful again mostly in transitions. Not really relevant unless you're doing like in-depth moveless modding, because that's good for transitions. I have it used for what's the one, this attack. Okay, and then this is the total frames for the current move. So for that low attack I just did, it's 75 total frames. And yeah, so if I were to shorten this, let's do 2B just to show. It just kicks it back, or kicks it out early, and then is weird. So obviously you wouldn't want to do that unless you're, you know, doing something intentional. Okay. Come on. Hey, how long it takes to load after you make a change. All right. And then I don't know what that does, if anything. This value here is going to be the ID of the script for the attack. Scuffle will basically change these automatically. I don't even know if it lets you change these, but you won't need to. You'll always want to just leave that alone and let Scuffle do that. And then here are the, excuse me. These are going to be the indexes of the hitboxes it uses. So her 4K uses 130 and 132, or 131, excuse me, and 132. And then since I modified it for a Brave Edge, I added 2 hitboxes in there, which is why they have like a super high index. And you'd be able to call different hitboxes again in the script. That's how those will be referred to. You can have up to 6 hitboxes with an attack. Most in the game typically use 1 or 2, but some attacks that have lots of different properties, or like a long hitbox, will have more. Or if it's got other properties like this one, it's got different properties. Oh, it's this. It's got different properties based on your power-ups, your stance gimmick. Okay. The next tab over is going to be the attack, which is the hitboxes. So you can see the hitbox data, and you can select other hitboxes to edit over here. But kind of going down this data again, these, I don't know 100% what they do. It's related to the attack. And so typically whenever I'm doing my move list mods, I'll find an attack that has similar properties or like a similar hit type. So for Leisha, if I wanted to do another attack like that, which I actually did for attacks that I stole from Huang, come on, for like this attack, because that's not her animation, but it has a similar like hit type, how the blade would strike the opponent. I just copied this data from up there. But yeah, so it's like the weapon or like the part of your body or armory that would attack, and something. Again, I don't really know, so I always just copy. And then I do know that this one here has something to do with the hitboxes. So for 0, it's going to basically be unmodified or have limited outside influence. If you do 0, 1, it typically refers to the hitbox resizer values, which we'll kind of brush over briefly because it's not in Scuffle at all. And I know 7 like adds a little bit to the hitbox, like it makes it a little bit larger. So it can be useful if you're doing something like on the ground is typically where I see it used. But yeah, again, I typically just copy that data from an attack that's similar and go from there. And then this block here is going to be all of the physics. So as it says over here, this top line is the physics on hit, and it's broken up into 3 byte pieces, each 2 bytes long. This first one is going to be like the intensity or the strength of the attack. This is going to be the angle, so like left, right, which direction it would push them. And then this is going to be used for launchers to kind of determine the like vertical angle if they go like forward or backwards. So for this one, it's B0, which is slightly forward, but not too much. If I were to change this to C, I don't think, oh yeah, it pushes them back farther. Yeah, so it kind of repeats. The first 2 are typically always the same. I don't know why they use 2, because like this one is only used for attacks that leave them standing or stunned, and this is going to be referred to anytime they're launched. I don't know why they didn't just like have 1 line, because they're the same thing. And like most attacks, you'll rarely see something, if ever, that'll be different. Yeah, and then the second line is again, or like the second set. This is just the counter hit version. So if the attack lands as counter, it'll refer to these physics instead of these ones. These are going to be the physics for an airborne opponent. So like what kind of air properties it has. These are the physics on block, and then the physics when they hit grounded. Yeah. This line here is going to be the hit level, which it does kind of say high, low, unblockable, whatever. So 4B is a high or mid. 4B is mid that does not hit grounded. 4-9 is high that obviously wouldn't hit grounded. And again, I typically just refer to other attacks because there's a lot. Like this is 73 of who knows how many. So I'll again refer to a similar attack and take the data from that. That's the best way to learn what things do and how things work, is to just go to an attack and kind of pick it apart and play with it. That's how I learned. This value here is kind of unknown. I do know that when it's got a 2 in this first block, it won't allow it to break your guard, but I don't necessarily know what entirely it does. Again, I just copy from a similar attack. Kind of the same here, but I think this has something to do with the attack type, whether it's kick or weapon attack, horizontal, vertical. I think that's where it gets it. These two here are going to be the hitbox when it opens and when it closes, it does actually hit on this line here, but it doesn't hit here. So it opens at 1 or 0F, which is 15, but it wouldn't actually begin to like hurt the opponent until 1 frame later. So this one technically is an I-16 attack, and the hitbox is open for 2 frames before it closes, which is common. And that's because it's a horizontal, so it has that extra frame to catch a little bit more of a step. But verticals do too. Like I think her 3B has a couple frames. Yeah. Yeah. This next group here is the damage. So you can change that to, you know, change your damage. Who'da thunk it? Come on. Scuffle. Oh, what was it? 1-4. Okay. This next block there is going to be chip damage. So if I were to make them guard... And I don't know why, but typically whenever there's chip damage, this will also be 0-2. So I'm just going to set it as that. Yeah, so that makes it do some chip damage on block. This group here is scaling, so like combo scaling. That's what they use to balance an attack, so it doesn't just do super high damage for the entire combo. Anything that lands after this will scale by this amount. So this scales by 20%. It's going to be a negative value. You could technically have a positive value, so things after it will increase in damage by comparison, but I don't know why you would want to do that. And then this block here is going to be the damage on guard. So it's typically used for guard breaks to scale the combo damage there. But for characters that do have a guard break that puts them positive enough to attack inside the guard break, like I know Killix has his 214B that chains with his soul charge critical edge, the flamey boy. So that attack would have some scaling, so it doesn't do full damage in that circumstance. Oh god. Sorry, got a message. And I was not prepared. Let's see. Go away. Okay. All right. So this block here, like it says, is frames of block stun. So our 4K has 22 frames of block stun, which means if you hit the blocked opponent, it takes them 22 frames before they would be able to do something. This line here is going to be the same thing, but for hit stun, though in the case of her 4K, it has a launch, or kind of, it's not necessarily a launch because it doesn't use values here, but yeah, like a knockback. Some animations are completely unaffected by these values, which most launchers, excuse me, launchers and stuns I shouldn't be doing this when I'm sick. Most launchers and stuns will not be affected by these values. It typically only works for like normal attacks or if there's some sort of recovery that leaves them standing. The values can also only be less than or equal to like the total frames of the animation. Otherwise, they either don't do anything or they mess with stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna go over animations later. I don't know if it'll be this stream or another, but I'll touch up on it a little. Yeah, so block, standing, counter hit, or I guess normal, it's not standing. And then it repeats here. Not sure why, but I always just copy the data here if I change it, paste it over this. This is going to be the hit effect. So her 4K uses the hit effect 469. These refer to a common file that I don't necessarily know which one exactly it uses, but I wouldn't want to modify it anyway because it is just asking for problems and why bother? But yeah, so if I were to change this to E, it's a similar thing, but not quite the same. They spin a little more, don't go quite as far. But yeah, there's like over 1,000 animations there. It's typically, I mean, it kind of follows a pattern. So 469 here, which is D501. 6 should be the same animation, but getting hit from one of the sides. 7 would be the same animation, but getting hit from the opposite side. And then 8 would be the same, but kind of getting hit from behind. So for just about every single animation, it has the four versions. So from the front, from I think it typically goes right, then left, and then back. Some of them do switch there. So I always just go through and play the animations until I find what I need. But again, for these, I always find a similar attack or one that has the effect that I want and go and copy the data there. This here is not the block effect like it says. This one is actually what it does when it hits while grounded. These, I believe, start at this index at 1188 or A404. And if the animation does not match that state they're in, so grounded would be the state that's required for these animations to play. If I were to copy this value and put it here, the game's more than likely going to crash. There are a few animations that'll let you do both, but very, very few. So expect a lot of crashes if you're going to be trying to do stuff that's not there. And yeah. And this line here, underneath the grounded effect, is going to be the standing block. So what would happen if they block it while standing? And this is going to be the crouching block. These are often the same, but for some attacks that, like, if they, like a special mid, right? Something that you can block while standing or while crouching. Some of them do play a different animation when you block it while crouching. But these are typically the same, even for special mids. This one does happen to be different. Yeah. This value here is going to be the guard damage override. So if I were to set it to, let's do this. It does the actual raw value, which your guard gauge has technically 240 points, just like the HP bar. So if I were to change this to 16, or let's do 14, which has a raw value of 20. It's going to do 8% guard damage. So it doesn't quite match up to what Scuffle Display is, but you know, the more you know. And then if it's FEFF, that's going to tell the game that it needs to calculate the damage itself. So it'll refer to your move level here. I think this can have an impact on it. Don't know what that line does. Yeah, so guard damage. This line here is going to be what I refer to as like combo limitations. So 0 means that there aren't any. So if an attack were to come, or you're able to chain something, like something's plus 16 on hit, right? And I do an attack that's 16. If it's 0, it'll let me chain it. But if it's 0, 1, it'll only let me chain it if it's counter hit. And yeah, this goes all sorts of numbers. Typically, you'll only see 0, 1, 0, 8, which I think doesn't let it chain at all, no matter what. Or you'll see 20, which if it's 20 here, it makes the opponent, like if they block it, they can't unblock, so it jails. And then it can be 21, so it'll jail on block, but it'll only combo if counter hit. Or 28, so it'll jail on block, but won't combo normally. These values here, again, typically are the same as each other. So this here is your guard impact level. So her 4K has a level 3 guard impact, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's, yeah. Oh, no. So I think it's the reverse. Yeah. So if it's 0, they have a level 3. So it kind of goes, it counts the opposite direction, I guess. So if it's 1 here, should have a level 2, I guess. Nope, just kidding. That's set somewhere else. I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, unless for some reason on the impact it doesn't hit until the second. No. Okay, no, I don't know what I'm talking about. That's probably actually referring to this, I would say. So that's 0, 1. That's 0, 2. So yeah, that kind of adds up. But again, there's a lot I don't know. I typically always refer to a similar move and take that. And sorry, got a question in the chat. So there technically is an Edgemaster style in the game, but it isn't usable because it randomly crashes. Like Luxatio, however you say his name, found the value and he can use the style, but it randomly crashes. I think with the addition of the character gimmicks and everything, it overloads the system and just, I don't know if it like bogs up the memory, or I have no idea. So no. Also, I don't think that it would load all their VFX and stuff, but I don't know. I have no idea. Anyway, so move level. I don't know what the first byte does, but this is actually, and I do know this is the like move intensity, I guess. So this can range from, I don't think it's ever 0, but I've seen values from 1 up to F, but A is typically like for a heavy attack, like a break attack. They'll typically be A. Like that one is a 6 despite being a heavy attack. That one's an A, not a break attack, but it's a slow heavy attack. And then like A is just 0, 1. So yeah, it would affect the hit spark level, so it was kind of just a little small guy there. But if I change that to 0A, it changes it to a heavy hit spark and sound effect and stuff. That's all kind of done automatically based on that. These values, no idea what they do. This one says it contributes to guard damage, but I don't know necessarily if that's true. Again, copy from a similar attack, and you're going to set yourself up for a much smoother ride when editing. Yeah, it's technically possible to remove character gimmicks, but they're pretty ingrained in the move list, so you'd have to go through a lot of different things to remove them in some cases. So is it really worth it? Who knows? But I have had to do that for my styles sometimes. Anyway, so this last tab is the scripting. So this is what tells the game what the attack should do, what it'll allow, everything other than like the basic animation in the hitbox. If I were to completely empty this script, which you'll want, if you ever want to do this, you're going to paste just 01000002. That's what Scuffle will accept as the basic script. If you just do 0102, which is the start byte and the end byte, it'll bug out and break. But yeah, so if I were to do that, it's got like a choppy recovery because the game's not being told what state that you should return to. It doesn't let you do the chain. It doesn't play a like attack sound effect or anything. Doesn't do much of anything. But we'll put the script back in there. Yeah, so it now accepts attack inputs. It plays sounds, voices, everything. But yeah, so move scripts are broken up into a few different sections that you can somewhat easily identify when you have, a little bit of training on it. This first section is going to be right here. Technically that line too. This first line is 8B0010 A50101. This is a check that I don't know exactly what it stands for, right? Like I don't have the actual source code, but I do know that this is only hit the very first time the game reads this script. And as an animation plays, it is constantly looping through the script again and again, and that's how it hits the frame checks and things like that. So this section here is only hit the very first time it comes into the attack. So yeah, that's what this check is saying. So if it is the first time, it allows it to read these lines here. If it's not the first time, it's saying we're going to jump, as it says over here, or go to is what Scuffle calls it. It's going to jump to byte 005A in the script. And Scuffle has those all lined up here, so it's jumping to this line here, which is the next segment. This line here is only hit when you are leaving. So if I were to hit A, it gets hit as I'm leaving to enter the second attack. It'll also get hit if I just hit A, Like the second I re-enter neutral, it'll get hit. So it's good to put something in there. Like if you have VFX in the attack, you'll put the cancel code in here or something like that. But yeah, coming back up here a little bit. This first line is in just about every single attack. 8B 3020. Sorry. This is going to tell the game what state you're going to enter, how many cancel frames you have, how many frames it's going to do a recovery on. So like that's what helps the animation transition smoothly back into whatever state you return to. It's typically C8, that's going to be your standing neutral state. C9 is going to be crouching. So if I change it to C9 here, it recovers as crouching. Again, there's lots of them. They're like C8, we can go here, is 200. So there's 200 other states before you even get to your standing neutral. I have no idea what they all do. I don't just sit there and play with stuff like that. It would be exhausting. But yeah, so if you want to go to a certain state, look through other styles and find someone who goes to the state you're wanting to do that attack, and then check this value here. This next byte set here, well, I guess maybe all of the scripts, the functions, everything, it's kind of broken up into groups of three bytes. So this first one is typically 8B or 89. That's telling the game what these next 2 bytes are. I don't know what the difference between 8, 9, and 8B are. They typically do the same thing. But yeah, the starting should always be 8B, and then follow-ups can be either 8B or 89. Again, I don't know why. I often use 8-9 and there's no issues, but I guess if you run into an issue, check that as a possible option. But yeah, anyway, so the first 2 bytes are typically going to be the function, or in this case, it's referring to a script in your move list. Most of the 3 move lists is it's encoded, or an encoded index. So this is referring to index 20 in group 3 is how the encoded indexes work. So they do that way. Every single style uses the same bytes here, but it can refer to different like indexes in the move list because not every style has the same number of attacks. Group 0, so if I were to make this 0, it's going to be referring to actual index 20, which is what? That's 32. So it'd be referring to move 32 if I were to do that. I wouldn't do that, but you know. So this particular index refers to a script that's the same in every single style, and that's just what to set it to the right state and everything. Yeah. So 3 sections. This first one's always going to be function ID or move ID, things like that. This second one is going to be like a function of this, or like a sub-function, what you would feed as a variable or additional info. So in this case, this function here accepts 3 different variables. Variable 1 is the return state. Variable 2 is the cancel frames. So this attack has 5 cancel frames, which means the last 5 frames of my 46 total attack frames, I'm able to leave the attack and do something completely different. Or, you know, it's obviously got the move checks down here, which is how you do like AA or, you know, the other attacks. So like for my Chaos Caliber mod, I just increased this value a lot and let things cancel way early. It's pretty common for it just to have like 5 to 10 for most attacks. Yeah, and then this last byte set here is the blending or transition to your return state. So 0A is 10 frames, so it's giving 10 frames of your recovery to transition back to the return state. So if I were to like increase this a bunch, let's do 2A instead. It recovers a lot more. So there's a lot more time spent getting me back to the neutral animation. And if I have none, it kind of snaps. It's not super obvious with hers, but if I were to make it C9, it just snaps to that new animation instead of having any time spent trying to make it look proper. So yeah, typically 8 to 10 there. Some attacks like as well, since he uses a lot of animations that aren't made for him. He uses a lot that were from the extra styles from Soul Calibur 3 and stuff. So he'll typically have a lot more transition frames, because otherwise you would see that other style's neutral, because the animations are designed to go back to a certain animation. So like a lot of Raphael's, since they changed his his neutral, a lot of his will put his hand like to his hip, like kind of how Amy stands now. And then he transitions away. So if they increased this, it would make it smooth or a little better considering the animation change, but doesn't really matter. This next line, again, is super common. I have no idea what it does. I just would include it if you're making a new attack. This one here is... it's kind of a animation buffers agent. So it has 2 frames. Like this is the function ID, so 000E. You wouldn't change that, but if you want to feed it a different amount there, like I'll do something crazy high, it like does something, like, slows down this for 20 or 32 frames. It slows your animations. So for some, like that doesn't look super crazy, but for some it looks very, very strange. So typically it's going to be 0 for attacks that have like multiple hits. That way it doesn't, let's see. I know that one's got to have one. Yeah. See, so it has 0. So it's saying that there should be 0 buffer or lag between the attacks. It's not super obvious without it, but for some attacks it can be pretty weird to not have that in there. But yeah, so if you're making a string of attacks and it's looking a little choppy, you would want to put this exactly like that. So 0E there, 0 here. And it's going to make it so the animation between different move indexes doesn't have any lag, any cutting, any whatever. These are variable lines. Having high numbers like this is pretty uncommon. I don't know why Xianghua does. You'll typically see like 19, so like 19, 1A, 1B, 1C are going to be like the common ones that are used in most attacks. This just allows you to put extra data. So I think, what does it use? I don't actually know if she uses them, so I don't know why they're there. They'll often be used for storing your input data. Like, so if you have an attack that only transitions on hit or something, they'll typically say, like, if you press A to transition, it'll store your A input there. So it'll say something like that. And then later it'll check to see if this variable is 1. So like if it hits, it'll check to see if this variable is 1. And if so, it'll allow the transition to the other attack. And if not, it won't move. That's kind of complex editing using these. It's a lot. So I'm not going to go too much further into that. But yeah, this is a variable line. So this is variable A8. This is variable A9. Again, I wouldn't use those because a lot of them are used by other core functions of the style, so you could be messing up things. But yeah, typically 1.9, 1A, 1B, that's what you'll see. Anyway, so all of that, these lines here get hit the very first time you enter the attack. After that, it jumps to A is an always jump. So anytime the script hits this line, it'll jump to this index. So 03A7. A lot of things do jump to the very end, but mostly it's going to be these top sections. So the very first time you're in here, it'll read all this and then jump to the very end. And then the second time through, since it's not going to allow transition here, it's going to jump to 5A, which is the second section here we kind of went over, which is the exit code. There's typically only one line in there unless that move has special properties it wants to clear out, or VFX and stuff it wants to make sure are getting canceled. But yeah, again, when you exit, or if you're exiting, it'll allow you to read this line. If not, you jump to 6C, which is here. And this is kind of where the main script for the attack is. But attacks that are done from your neutrals, so like A, 6B, all of the stuff that you can do while you're just kind of standing there, or from 8-way run, they have this additional kind of section here. It's typically kind of long, but this is just checking for this section here only gets hit again if it's your very first time through. So it's just looking to see if you have like really close by, like if you look at my inputs there, I'm technically hitting A before A plus B, but it's going to A plus B. And that's what this section here is looking for. It's looking for like combination inputs, or like if you're crouching, it'll be checking for directional inputs. Otherwise it'll do while rising B instead of whatever crouching attack. I typically don't mess with this. If I were to create an attack, I don't add that in. It makes the gameplay ever so slightly more like difficult because you have to get your inputs pretty exact, but there's a lot of jumps and checks to do a single thing. Like for this one attack, it's this whole section here. So there's 4 checks, a lot of jumps, and it's just it's too much work. I don't care enough. But yeah, so this whole section you can typically skip to right here. This line should be the same for everyone as well. 302C. This is going to be the core of the actual move. So this attack, I don't know what it does. It could have something to do with like common effects like when you're walking, that may be what does the little tufts of dirt on the ground. It could do sound effects for the attack within. I don't know. I always copy an attack and then modify, or copy a script or an attack script and then modify as needed. So that should always be there. This next one is going to be the attack streak. So that's what adds the pink streak when she attacks. Let me fix this real quick. So you can change where the streak is applied. So again, 3088, I know automatically that that's referring to a script, but you can also check over here if it's add. So if it says add here, it's referring to this move ID, which is a script ID, versus if it's saying state, that's referring to like an actual engine function. So we wouldn't be able to like modify the code for this line, but technically speaking, if I wanted to go in here and change how her streaks work, like if I wanted to, or like for Viola, right, her claw, I added Nightmare's hand streaks. That's how I did that. So I modified it. Anytime this value is 0F, I think I did, it'll automatically do 2 streaks instead of just 1. So you can kind of customize anything that's add, anything that's a script within your move list. But like, yeah, this line here is a voice line. I wouldn't be able to necessarily change too much about how that works. But yeah, so you change where the streak applies with this. So if I do 0, 0, 0, or let's do 1, 4, because I know that's one of her legs. I guess it helps if it actually saves. Yeah, okay. Will you cooperate with me, please, Scuffle? You're making me look bad. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, if you pay attention to her, what is that, her right leg, it's got the weapon streak on it. You could technically do more than one of these, but they kind of conflict with each other. So most attacks that have streaks to like multiple weapons or both legs at the same time, that sort of thing, it'll just do one of them here and then manually call the streak for the other, because there's a function for that. But yeah, this byte set here is a voice line. So if I do 0, 0, 0, 1, it'll automatically play a voice based on the attack. Like, it'll choose when to play it based on your hitbox opening. So I adjusted the manual voice line it had to not play until way late so it doesn't get hit, but that's what's playing the voice now. The rest of this, I think one of these says like when to start, so it might be this guy. We'll try it. Let's play around a little bit, right? Let's see, is that not the one? We'll start it at 14 or 1E. I want it starting late. Okay, no, so I don't know what that first one does, or that, third, what is that? Third one does. I know one of these is for when the streak starts. There you go, it's that one. So it's saying the streak shouldn't start until 1E, but since it's after the attack, it's not going to get picked up by the script because it's only looking relative to your hitbox here. So if I started at 0.8, it just is a little delayed. So for attacks that have a, they don't attack until pretty late in the animation, like A plus B or 4K, they won't have it start until later. They do, if it's 0, it tries to start relative to this, but sometimes you do need to set it automatically or it'll be playing a script or the streak the whole time and it'll look funny. And then I think this one is how long the streak is, or like how long the streak will be on screen for, so how many frames. So if we change that to 0.8, it should be just a real short streak instead of being open. Sorry, super long time. My throat's starting to hurt. This was a bad idea. Yeah. This check here, you'll see is super common. It is a frame check. So this is saying if it's frame 9, we'll enter A5250 whatever is going to be frame check. You'll typically see either a frame check like this, or she should have two. Yeah, no, right here. A52502. It's saying if it's between frames 2 and 8, it'll allow the follow-up code. Otherwise, it's jumping to 3E, which is jumping here, which is jumping here. But yeah, so frame checks are pretty common. That's something you'll want to learn to identify. Frame checks, unlike a lot of other things, don't have the function code. The code itself, or because it's not like referring to any sort of function, it's just a check. It's just going to be this. So it's A5250, and then this last byte on every single line is telling the game like how many byte sets are before it. So for this line, there's 6 byte sets total. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For this check, it's just got 1 byte set before it, so it's that. This one here has 2 byte sets, so 1 and 2. So it's kind of how you can read the endings a little bit. But yeah, so this is checking for byte or for frame 09. If it is, it'll enter this code. If it's not, it'll jump to 221, which is here. This is another very common script. This is what's it's the tracking script. So just about every single attack will have this, and these variables do something. Again, it's a pretty complex script. It's got 8 byte sets. I don't mess with it. If I want a particular tracking, I'll try to find an attack that has a similar attack type and copy from that. And then we've got a frame check here, but it's got 7400. So frame checks, and I guess referring to frames in general, has a few shortcuts they added. So if this first one is 74, that's saying relative to your entry. Sorry. So this is relative to your entry. So this is saying when you enter at frame 00. So that means the very frame you enter, it'll hit this. This next one is checking for when you enter, but 2 frames later. So 2 frames after you enter, this one will get hit. And that's pretty common for attacks, or for anything that has a frame check really close to the beginning. But yeah, that's how you can identify it. It also has 76, I want to say, which this is referring to when you leave, like, so on your final frame, I believe. It also has 78, which is your current frame. So the 78 is typically used in switches, that continue the same animation. They'll use 7/8, and that's how it knows to go into that next attack at what frame, regardless of what frame checks or whatever you are using. Yeah, this is a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of just hex. It's just raw data that should not be fun to play with, but it's so fun for me. I don't know why. Okay, this next line is referring to state, so it's a system function. This one, actually, just kidding. It's not the next one. This one, 07D0. This is referring to a sound effect. And I've actually got a little cheat sheet for that. Let's pull that up. So, yeah, so 07D0 is how you're going to play style or weapon-based or common sound effects. It got it kind of broken up by what it sounds like. I don't necessarily know what they're all technically for, though some of them are pretty identifiable, like those ones. And then it typically the character sound effect files are somewhere here before their like actual style based sound effects are. And they're also set up really weird. Like, it's typically starting at like 1 or 2 before it does, but a single sound effects index will actually like play layered sounds, which can be really, really annoying. Because for me, like for lightning, for example, I copied sounds from other styles, but I couldn't refer to them because of how their stupid files are set up. It's really weird and annoying. Like I could only play layered versions of a single sound. It was the dumbest thing. So I don't like it. I don't like sounds. Things that I don't have control over are frustrating. And sound seems to be one of them. So it's pretty tricky sometimes to replace existing things. Anyway, moving on. This next line is 0272. So since it's not locked behind a frame check, because this frame check here does jump here, it's getting hit every single time it goes through. I don't know what that, what function 34 does, but typically if it has it in there, it has some level of importance. So I would keep it in if I'm doing a similar attack. Though I'm sure it would be relatively fine if you leave it out. A lot of them, like some of them, I'll say, actually, not a lot of them. Some of them don't have a huge impact. Like it could be doing something super, super minor that doesn't actually affect gameplay. But again, I don't know what function 22 does. I just know that most attacks don't have it. So that's what I'm saying, or referring to when I say it might not do anything. Okay. And then this next line is A525. So it's another frame check. This is saying if we are between frames 7-4, so when we first enter, and 0D, it's going to hit this line and then jump to 029C, which is that following line. And then if we're outside of these frames, it's going to jump to 0293, which is this line. So that's kind of a common setup here. And it's a way to set a value regardless of your frames. It'll be setting one of the two values, or be doing one of two things, right? So it'll be either here or here. I don't know what state 20 does, which is what this is. I believe it's related to states, so it could be saying that it's putting you into counter hit mode. That's often done automatically, so I don't know exactly what it's doing here. But again, I know that most attacks don't have state 14 or state 20, whatever, in it. So I wouldn't feel like super worried about removing it personally. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fuck around and find out when it comes to modding, because there's no real, like, we don't have the source code. We don't have exactly what everything does. So unless you play around with it a lot, it's almost impossible to find out what a lot of things do. Yeah, it's just a lot of learning. Okay, moving on. This next check here is, again, pretty common. This is a hit check. That's going to be in my general notes. Here. And this one's actually this follow-up, which is hit check and counter check. So it's checking if it hits here, and then it's checking if it's counter hit. And then if either one is false, it's jumping to the same value, which is actually this. Let's reload so the lines are matching up so we can follow along a little easier. Yeah, so checking if it hits. If it doesn't, it jumps to 0B7, which is this following line here. And then so if it does hit, it goes to this next line, and this is checking if it's a counter hit. Again, if it's not a counter hit, it jumps to this next line. But if it is a counter hit, it's setting variable 1b with value 0.3. So for Leisha's AA, it has a special property where the entire thing is a counter or a combo if the very first hit is a counter hit, without there being any sort of stun or anything that like forces the game to identify everything else as their counter hit properties. Because without a counter hit, that last hit does not chain. And it does that with this check here, because this variable here is being passed on. Actually, it's that next line, so we'll just keep going. So yeah, this variable will get passed on to the next attack, and that attack will change according to what this value is. And then this next one, we have A502 again. It's value 2, so it's checking between two frames. So it's checking to see if we are between 0.1 and 0E. And those values, what am I saying? Hello. Anyway, so yeah, checking between those. If you are in between those, it'll go to this next check, which is an input check. Again, I have here. Oh, I didn't actually. Let's. Oh. There we go. We'll do the same thing here, actually, while I'm right there. 0.3, I believe, is the first. 0.4 is not one. Next one's going to be 0.6. 0.7 is... Oh, just kidding. 0.4 is one. Um, 0.5 equals A plus, or no, it's, what is that, 4 plus, oh, wait. So, yeah, for this standard move check, or button check, it's going to be 0, 0, 0, and then in the value of what your button is. So 0.1 is A, 0.2 is B, 03 is K, 04 is G. So horizontal, vertical, kick, guard would be those values. And then these multi-input checks, instead of being 0, 0 and then the value, it's reverse. So it's 0, whatever the combination is. So for A plus B, it's 0, 3, which is A 0, 1 plus B 0, 2. So it's 0, 3 and then 0, 0. And it says it has this, which tells the game that it's looking for a multi-button attack. Yeah. So, yeah, 3, 4, 0. Oh, so that's... No, that's wrong. Hang on. I'm sorry. That's 4. This is 8. There is no 3 or... Yeah. Okay. So we have 3, 0, 5. This is 0. Oh no, that's right. 0, 6, 2 plus 4. And then 0, 7 is those three combined. 0, 9 plus G. 0, A is B plus G. It's going to be 0, C, K plus G. Oops. And then that's 7 plus 8. Math on a sick brain is not fun. A plus G, oh, B plus K plus G. Okay. There you go. Excuse me. Yeah. Now the inputs are in there. You're welcome. I spoil you. Anyway, yeah. So this section here is essentially saying between frames 0, 1 and 0E, which is 14, right? Yeah. Between the first 14 frames of the attack, it's looking to see if we press A. And this structure here, where it's 1 check, 2 checks, and then these 2 lines, is a very common, like, multi-level check structure. So it's saying if you're between these frames, we can continue. If not, we're going to jump to 0, 2, D5, which in most cases is going to be this line here. So that second line of that other check. Typically speaking, both of these will refer to that same line. There will sometimes be a different structure, kind of, but that's if this number here is 2, 9, which is saying it can be this or this. So basically 2, 9 here will say if you do this, this typically will refer to this line instead of this line. So that's saying if we're here, we're going to jump instead to here, which is always what's going to say we're going to skip over this check and then continue on with whatever. There can be a lot of these in one thing, though typically it is just the 2-tier structure, so the 1 and then 2, 2 there. But like we were looking up here, these ones do typically have more. Like this one has 1 and then 2, and then it jumps to here, and then it's got another and then it's got another, and then it's got another before it finally has the end result. So that's typically how those multi-levels are structured. But yeah, anyway, so between frames 1 and 14, it's checking for input A. If we do input A between those frames, it'll hit this line, which jumps to 02D8, and it's got a 2A, which is the always jump. Sorry, I should say this is basically the true line and the false line. That's how those are structured. So if true, if both of these are true, we're going to jump always to 02D8, which I don't know why it does, but it's 3 bytes before this. Anytime I am like messing with the code or making it myself, I match it exactly. So I would do 02DB instead of D8. But a lot of the game coding for this in particular, the when true, it'll jump like 3 bytes before the actual index of the line. Again, I don't know why, but yeah, I would put it to 02dB, and it would do the same exact thing, and it's just easier for me to understand at a glance. Anyway, so yeah, if true, we're jumping to this line here, and then if not true, so if false, we're going to jump to 02F0, which is the line right underneath it. So yeah, again, between 01 and 14, if we press A, it's going to hit this line. If not, it's going to jump to this line. And this line here is a switch. It can be identified by 2507 at the end, which is a system function that tells us to jump to another move. And the way those are structured is this first one is always going to be the move ID. So in this case, it jumps to 010A, which is the hex code for move 266, which if we attack, you can see up here, we jump from 264, which is our standard A, to 266 at, which is our AA. Come on. Okay. Yeah, so that first byte set is the index you're going to jump to. So we could change that to whatever. I don't know what attack that is, that it's just recovering. Let's try a different one. How funny is it that they're both just recovery? I mean, it's not common for people to have like a recovery only. Oh, there you go. Happen to go to the attack throw. So yeah, that's what happens if you don't have like any sort of checks to an attack throw. It just does it anywhere on the stage. That's funny. Anyway, we're going to change that back. So yeah, we jump to this attack. This next byte set is going to be what frame we enter this attack on. So like I was saying earlier with the shortcut code 7800, if I were to put that there, it's going to say whatever frame we leave this attack on, that's what it's going to enter that next attack on. So in this case, since the next byte set is the frame we leave the attack, this one is leaving. Sorry. This one's leaving the attack at frame 0C, which is frame 12. So if we have this at 7-8, it's going to enter that next attack at frame 12. This frame, or the attack in particular, has like transition, but It's not quite as easy to see that you're entering it earlier than you should be. Or, you know, later, I guess, technically, since we're entering at 0C. But yeah, so like it cut 12 frames out of that second attack by doing that. Yeah, so with switches, the index of the move you're switching to, the frame you're entering that move, and the frame you leave your current move. And then anything else on a switch line. So most switches are going to be just like this one here. It's just the 3 byte sets. So move attack or attack you're going to, attack you or frame you enter that attack, and frame you leave your current attack. So it'll be 2, 5, 0, 7, 0, 3 for standard attacks. Some of them do have less, like this one actually. She's got just basically all of them. Look at her go. This one doesn't have the frame you leave. It only has the frame you're going to enter that new attack on. And things will do that if they want you to go to that next attack as soon as you press the button, which in this case it's looking for G, which is your cancel. So it doesn't want you to hit a certain frame before you transfer. It wants you to be able to go to that cancel right away as soon as you press G. So yeah, standard, semi-common, and then you can also have 0, 1 where it only has the attack. So it would look like that. And that's just saying it doesn't have the frame you enter, but that's always going to default to 0. So this is basically saying we would hit this. Again, it also doesn't have the frame we would leave. So as long as there's not like a restrictive check above it, which in this case it's only looking for frames between frames 2 and frame 8, looking for you to press G. As long as you do that, it's going to leave right away, enter in this attack at frame 0. But yeah, so those are going to be like the 3 common structures for it. But when it has all this extra stuff, that's what the variable data that it was collecting up here, that's how that gets transferred to that next attack. So 8A is the code used to refer to a variable. So this is saying, again, we'll just go over, we're going to this attack. Sorry. Going to this attack, entering at frame 0, leaving at frame C, and we're sending it variable 19 using the code 8A0019. We're also sending it variable 1A and 1B. And it's got 6 total byte sets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So when we enter into 266, it's also getting 3 variables that we can use. And yeah. Then, yeah, anyway, moving on. It's got another frame check between 0, 1 and 0, 7. This one's looking for an directional input. Sorry. And I've got those kind of broken up as well because there's 2 different kinds. There's this one that's always going to be the same direction regardless of whether or not you're first or 1P or 2P. And that's typically going to be characters like Talim for her stances. She will always turn to her left if you're doing like her wind step, whatever it's called. I don't know. She'll always turn to her relative direction. That's actually wrong. I'm sorry. That's For that, you wouldn't want this. You'd want your relative because otherwise you're not going to be. So what is this common for? I'm trying to remember. I guess it's not all that common, but some of them are used. Because there's rarely something where you would press 4, which is like left, right, on your controller. There's rarely stuff where you would press that when you're on the 1-player side or the 2-player side without it being, a like completely different input. So yeah, these aren't super common. Anyway, this one does. Oh, you dumb ass. I'm sorry. I am lying straight to your face. This is basically saying, regardless of, it's checking relative to you, or what am I saying? No. God, this is bad, guys. Why would anyone listen to me? I don't know what I'm talking about. This is saying you always press 4. So 4 is back. So this input check is looking for 6, right? Am I right? I don't know why they wouldn't use this one because that's always going to be front. Right? Yeah. Oh, it does. It does use that one. I'm so silly, guys. Yeah, okay, so these are not going to be used all that common. But they are used, so that's how you can identify them when they are. I don't know offhand who actually does use them. It's kind of... because it's not a logical thing. In my brain. It doesn't compute. Does not compute. I'm short-circuiting. Anyway, so between frames 1 and 7, it's looking for this input check, which is 10:08. So it's looking for this, which is 6, or forward. So if you press forward between frames 1 and 7, we're going to jump to 3:14, which I added this, which is why it matches exactly to the line versus being that 3 frames prior. But yeah, so if you do press forward, we're going to jump to attack 267, which is 010B. We're going to enter it at 01, and we can leave as early as 01 since that is before this check. But we can technically leave up to frame 7 because it's looking for the input throughout those. It's kind of the same with this one up here. We have a maximum input check of E, but we can leave as early as 0C. Anyway, next one is 02 to 08 input check, looking for standard input of 08, which we can look at the cheat sheet, is G. So that's what's looking for our cancel. If true, it's going to jump to, see, that's 341, which is 3 frames prior. It's going to jump to 283, which is a switch to move ID 010B. We're going to enter in that attack at frame 28. It does that because that animation technically plays backwards, which is how it reverses. Yeah, anyway. Next is between 01 and 08. It's looking for input 04, which is kick. If true, it's going to be 0306E, which is 3 bytes before this line here, which is another switch. She's got a lot of switches on her A. This one's going to jump to 0115, which is move ID 277. We're going to enter in that at 00. We can leave as early as 02. That's going to be for that attack. And then it's got this line. I don't know what that does. 3257. I'm curious because that's not common. Oh, so this is just like a Xianghua. Because it's referring to these variables that we typically don't set. So I guess it's just something that Xianghua does. Yeah, interesting. Not too worried about it. So yeah, then we're gonna hit this. This is outside of a move or a check, so it'll be hit every time. So will this. This one here, 3392. I also don't recognize that. 010A. Must be another Xianghua specific thing. I don't see that very often. Okay, and then this last line, the 302E, that's very common. It's basically always going to be the very last thing before your final jump to the end bite there. That should be basically in every single move. It's one of those things that, just like the tracking or this line up here, this guy, those are in basically every single move. I guess so is this. This line here is it's what this check here sends us to, which, yeah, I don't know what it does. I do know that this section here is often used for stances that cycle back into each other. They'll often have it, they'll have a switch in there that sends it back to itself. This gets hit like on your last frame of the move. So yeah, stances will typically use that, but yeah. So that's kind of how moves are structured. It only took us like 4 hours to get there because I'm so, like, I'm the best teacher in the land. You're so lucky to have me. Fuck, we're so screwed. Anyway. Yeah. The left panel over here, we probably should have hit that very first before I went into all this and telling you exactly what each line does in a move. But that would be too easy. So yeah, left line, or left side, left panel. You can load a move list to view other things. I have in my files, I have this animations and move list dump. So it's got like old animation or old move lists and stuff if you wanted to look. So the converted ones here, they're going to be the move list. So this is Alpha Patroclus's move list from 5. You can't like actually inject this into the game, but it lets you read the attacks. You can see the hitbox information. This is backwards, but for the most part, like, it makes it easier to transfer attacks from previous games. So if you wanted to, but you can see, I mean, you probably can't right off the bat, but all of these like common move animation or move IDs, these are the two common. This is the hit streak, and this is the whatever. The indexes are off. I think that one actually matches, but this is wrong. So if we inject it, it's referring to a bunch of incorrect things that aren't where they should be, and the game will crash. Let's do it. So yeah, it's referring to animations that are not matching up, obviously, because it's not the same character. I'm actually surprised that I can play this many without it crashing. But like, things don't work. Oh, that actually drained meter. Yeah. Anyway, so I also have all of their animations. These are in the order that the Movelist calls them. So if you look here, move ID 0 is animation 0 and kind of just increases from there as new animations are called. And I did that so it's a little easier to read them. So if we open this CSV, which is a comma separated value or Excel sheet, essentially, gives you some information about it. So frame or animation 0 is 120 frames. Animation 0 is always going to be their neutral. These are all of the move IDs that refer to that animation. In group 0, these are the moves that refer to it in group 1. In the encoded, those always start with 1 and then start from 0 again and increase. There's 1 in group 2 that refers to it. There's none in group 3. And then for some characters, I have the animation description or like special notes filled out. I had it automatically populate the throw values, so you can kind of easily identify which animations are throw pairs, which are in a pair of 2, so they have your character's animations and then like the hurt side, so what the opponent would play. Yeah, and then these are kind of broken up into sections automatically because of how they're called. Section 0 is your base attack, your movement, your basically what you'll see in battle that your character does. Group 2 or 0 or hello vodka. Group 1 is your intros, outros, your timeouts, like if you have the timeout, your little pout thing that they do. Group 2 is all of the hurt scripts. So anytime you get hit by an attack or something, that's going to be in here. It also has like throw hurts. That's what plays the opponent grunts and whatever. Those are always all going to be in group 2. And then group 3 are where most of like the core functions that they don't have an actual animation, but they add to the character. So like that's how most of the gimmicks will be set or modified, things like that. It's going to be group 3. And then it also has their unused animations. Some characters, not all, have some animations in their animation list that were not referred to in the actual gameplay or the move list. A lot of these are either kind of duplicates. Some of them are fully unique. Like Viola had quite a few scrapped like beta animations, I guess you could refer to them as, where they're a little rougher. They're not as refined, that sort of stuff. And I was able to use those for a few things. Like Viola's AAA. Has one of her unused animations. So that was an animation not used. Same with that where she throws it all extra like. Those were animations that were in actually Amy's move list in Soul Calibur 6, and I was able to pull them and give them to Viola. Yeah. Let's see, what should we touch on? Oh, before you go out of the battle, you'll want to make sure you save. I didn't actually modify anything that I was intending to keep, so it didn't matter. But if I left without saving the move list, everything we just did, everything we went over would be gone. The amount of times that happens is redonkadonk. Or like if the game crashes and you don't save, or like something's wrong with the script, all I can say is try to save regularly, because otherwise data loss is a real thing and very painful. Yeah. This is how the actual gameplay files are, or the move list files are named. So it's HDR 0 and then the character ID. So it'll match up to this here. So like Ivy is HDR 00B, which is up here. So that's Ivy's move list file. And if you have the hotloader mod plugin, fuck my brain, you can just put it in this this folder structure, and the game will load your changes immediately. That's how like Vodkaverse works. It's just pulling, it installs these files and pulls directly the modified files as it needs them. So yeah, you want to make sure you save regularly. If you load a move list, it kind of just sits in Scuffle's memory first before like actually going into the game. So if you load a move list, you'd want to inject it. Or if you think something didn't sync up right, you can inject it again, whatever. That'll just like overwrite the game's memory with the move list loaded in Scuffle's memory. God, we are bouncing all over the map. You're so lucky to have me. Okay, anyway. Move ID, this is where you'll type in the move ID. That's to load whatever move ID you've entered. This is to save whatever changes you've typed. Obviously, I've clicked on that a couple times. This is to pick the other hitbox in your array of hitboxes you've set. This will copy the move ID or the move setup to your clipboard, just the raw text. Typically, if I'm copying a move, I won't use this because it will copy this as well. And if I'm copying for another character, especially, these bytes won't match up like the hitbox IDs. So I'll just copy like this. So copy this data, which is the core structure. So it's got the animations, the move length, all that stuff. And then I would copy all of its hitboxes separately. For that, I would just use the shortcut here. And then same with the script, just copy like that. And then if I were pasting this on someone else, which we'll actually go through here in a second, and I'll show you kind of how to do that and clean it up a little bit. This is how I would do it. So copy that, copy each of the hitboxes, and then copy the script in Notepad and kind of set it aside until we're ready to go over and paste the data. And then we would essentially paste it as is. So we'd cut this out, paste it over that, and then you have to modify hitboxes one at a time. So you'd have to hit that and then save and then reload and then paste that other one and then save. Anytime you're pasting a full script, you're going to need to clear out this script first. So you would set it to these 4 bytes like we kind of touched on earlier. So just 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, and then save. Otherwise, Scuffle runs into issues trying to update the pointers and will break the move list or the move viewer, and you won't be able to do anything. So do this first. And anytime you're pasting a full script like this, you're going to hit save, wait for Scuffle to save and reload. And then right here, before you do anything, you're going to hit save one more time. Because that first time it pastes, Scuffle goes through, and for every single pointer, it tries to update it to the new pointer to accommodate for your pasted values. But you just pasted the entire thing, and Scuffle doesn't realize that. It goes through and tries to update every single pointer, and it points to things that then don't exist and breaks. So you have to save it twice. So that first time it tries to update, and then that second time it pastes or it saves that same exact data that we had in the window. So it saves this same exact thing one more time, but doesn't update it anything. So then we have the full script here. Okay. At this point, we went over full Scuffle, brief overview of the moves and everything. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy a move. Let's copy a throw from, let's do something it's going to have weird weapon values to see if we can show what's kind of going to happen. So let's do 2B. We can't do 2B because Viola's installed. So let's do who uses a second weapon in it. Talon. We're going to copy one of Talon's throws and put it on Astaroth. Let's do that one. That one's funny. Okay. So Scuffle automatically pulls up the throw data, or the move data, excuse me, for that attack. So that throw is ID 414. So we're going to copy this. Throws, hitboxes work differently. You can't edit them in Scuffle. You'd have to hex edit if you're going to do that in the actual move list file. But so they're always going to be 10 over here, and then the ID of the throw data, and we'll pull one up, I suppose. So they are going to be at, let's see if I remember which one. 592A. Hey! Oh, I was wrong. So they're going to be right at what this points to, this value here. So let's, there we go. So at offset 14, it's going to be these 4. And they use little endian, which is the byte structure here. So if you go to, you're going to type it backwards essentially. So 0590E8. So you're typing the bytes from right to left instead of left to right. So if we go there, this is going to be where the throw data or the throw boxes, I guess you could call them, start. and they're in 3-byte sets. So this first one is going to be the damage, and then these second two are some sort of scaling, I believe. I don't know exactly what they do. Looks like for all of hers. The third one is zeros. For some characters, they are different. I don't know. So, yeah, I typically just mess with the values. Very few throws like actually let you combo anyway, so you wouldn't necessarily need to worry, I suppose. But if your throw does lead to combos and the combo does too much damage, you'd have to like modify it in some scaling with those bytes. Anyway, that's where they are. So yeah, we're gonna continue copying this. So, and Scuffle and Notepad, we're gonna copy this data. I'm not gonna copy this because, again, the throw box is gonna be a different index, or I guess, technically speaking, since those are group 1 of them, this will refer to a throw box but the damage is going to be different. So I'm not going to copy it. I'm just going to copy the script, and I'll refer to one manually when I go through that. But if we were copying a normal attack, I would copy the hitbox here, but that doesn't do anything because they're not set up to load the hit throw boxes. Anyway, so now I have the raw data. So if I were to go over and paste it, because these are relatively low IDs, animation 321, every character is most likely going to have an animation of that index, because that, like, they have a lot of animations and there's a lot of duplicate entries and stuff. So I'll go through and paste it and show what's going to happen. But for some characters, if they have a higher animation ID, you're going to need to change that before you do anything. Otherwise, the game's just going to crash. Because if it's trying to play an animation that doesn't exist, the game will crash. So, heads up. But yeah, so player animation is ID 0141 or 321. And this line here for throws is what sets up the hurt. This is going to refer to the hurt script in the Movelist. And this is going to be the animation ID in your style's animation list that the opponent will play. So they play animation 0142, which is the hurt pair for this throw. But yeah, let's just go to Astaroth. I'm just going to paste it over as A plus G because I don't care. It's just an example. So, like I said earlier, anytime you're going to paste an entire script, empty it out first. And then we're going to type in the ID here so we can quickly just load when we need to refresh the Scuffle data. Okay, then I'm going to copy all of this over. Since we're copying over a throw, it's already going to have a throw box in there most likely. I'm just going to change it to throw box 0, so 010. And then I'm going to paste the script in. So you can modify each of these tabs at the same time, but you can only modify like one hitbox if we were to do that at a time. But yeah, so we're just going to paste everything and we're going to hit save. I'm going to wait for Scuffle to write everything and reload the data, because it writes to the memory and then reloads the memory in the... Leave me alone. Sorry. But yeah, so we saved once. Before we do anything, we need to save one more time to hard paste all those pointers. But now we can go over and grab. And yeah, so you'll see that the animations are obviously not what we copied, but the hurt, like the damage and stuff, does match up to what we took it from. It's also playing, sometimes Scuffle will get stuck like this when you paste a script. So if you just close the Movelist viewer and go over here, as long as it's still like loading stuff, because this is what it says when you save a change. It reacquires the Soul Calibur process. So as long as after you've done a change, it continues to like populate the move data as you play. The Movelist viewer isn't broken, it just stalled, so you just have to close it and reload. But if you get an error here, you'll have to like relaunch Scuffle. And if you continue to get errors, then you done fucked up. But yeah, so it's, the camera's wonky. That's because it's referring to Astaroth's camera, which is what this line does. So it's referring, this is what tells us that it's referring to a camera. It's referring to this camera index. This is basically always going to be 8001. Sometimes it's 03 if it's got like different camera options, I believe is what that does. But yeah, 8001 is common. So it's referring to Astaroth's camera 6, but that's not going to match up to Talim. And unfortunately, the camera portion of the tool that we use to modify like the lists of animations and stuff doesn't work. So if you wanted to add cameras to a throw that you're copying to a different style, you'd have to do it manually, which is complicated and annoying, and I hate it. Yeah, so I'm just gonna take this line out. That's going to remove the camera, so it'll just like follow us like it does in normal gameplay when you move. Yeah. So right now, it's kind of working, right? Like, it's got the damage, it's got everything, but the animations are wrong because it's referring to stuff that Astaroth doesn't have yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this real quick. He is 12, I want to say. Yeah. And I just installed Vodkaverse, so I'm just going to overwrite this because I don't care. I'm not losing anything. And then we're going to just open Inferno, and it doesn't matter. I'm just getting out of Astaroth, so that way when I change what I'm about to change, it's not going to modify or mess with anything. It's going to be able to just reload his data right away. Yeah. So now we need to get the animations for Astaroth. I already have them, but I'm not going to use them because I'm going to show you guys how to do it. So, actually, we're just going to, because I have them. Oh, let's see. So, unpacked, yes. Okay, cool. So, from my modding resources folder, we're going to go to animations and Movelist. We're going to select Astaroth because that's who we're trying to add to. We're going to select his, oh, nope, just kidding. We're going to go to originals because all of these are going to be modified to the condensed move list. They're going to be in order that the move list calls them, and that's not the actual order of the animations. So if you use those, he's going to do all sorts of crazy stuff, kind of like how it was when we loaded Alpha Patroclus on Laisha. It's going to be playing all sorts of wrong animations. So we want to do the exact, or the default animation list. So we're going to go to Originals, Animations, Soul Calibur 6, and Unpacked. That's just when it is a raw unpack from the game files. And open Astaroth. And these are all of his animations. They don't have names because Bamco. And yeah. So I'm going to just Control A, select all, and copy all of these. Let's actually just make a new setup so you guys can follow along, I guess. So I'm going to put these in a folder called Animation Extension. Okay. So we have our animation extension folder. Did I label that? I'm just gonna make sure I spelled it right because I'm dyslexic sometimes. New folder. Oops. Okay, yeah. Then we're gonna go here again into modding resources. So again, from the modding resources folder, we're gonna go to tools and copy the Soul Calibur Mote Tool zip. We're going to paste that in here and unzip, or extract all. Don't show me. Okay. I'm just going to, I want it all in this folder with the animation extension folder. And now this folder is empty. So yeah, we're going to extract this, and then, I mean, you could be smart about it and, you know, like take out this folder name, or just take everything out of another folder and put it in here. Anyway, so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to repack, but I'm going to open this and make sure it's pointing to the right folder. So this repack mote, you can just open it in Notepad to modify if you need to. But this is telling the tool what folder it's going to look into, which is right here. What the game is, it should always be SE6 for what you're repacking. And it tells it that we're dealing with motions. So I just wanted to make sure that's right. But we haven't added any animations yet, so if we repack it, it's not going to do us any good. So in the animation folder, I'm going to go down to the very bottom, or to the file titled Movelist.json. And that's going to be this file here. So we're going to open that. Again, you can do Notepad. We're just going to keep that open. And then we're also going to go back to the modding resources folder and go to animations and move lists. And we're going to go to Talim. And we're copying from SC6. Actually, let's go back to Talim here, because I prefer to always use the condensed files. That's just how I like to do things. I mean the animations from my converted one. So these renamed sort of things. I'm going back onto Talim so I can get the move ID of her throw. So it's ID 414. And then in Talim's SC6 folder, so follow that. We're going to open the CSV, so that mote chart again, just like we were looking at earlier. I'm going to scroll down here until I see move ID 414, because that's the move ID that I wanted to copy. And then over here on the left, this is the renamed file, the animation. So we're going to want to find and copy Talum 172, and we also want to get the throw hurt, which is it should be the same ID, or the same move ID over here, but on the left it's going to be that next file. So we want 172 and 173 for the animations. So we're going to go over here, scroll down, 172 and 173. I'm going to copy those. We're going to go over to our animation extension folder again and paste them. So those are now in the folder that we have set up to extend Astaroth's animations. And we're going to open our notepad again. So this is Astaroth's motion file that we are going to be modifying. And I'm just going to copy this last line and that comma above and paste it. So it's pasting that same exact data. I'm going to go over here and copy the name of the first file we're going to add to it. Just like that. And then I'm going to copy that line, and it's just a little easier to paste that new name and then modify the single digits that you're going to need to do. And this is arguably the best way to copy if you're only doing like one animation, one or two. If you're adding a whole bunch, I'll show you how to use my tool. It doesn't have like a release yet. I'll have to like go through and re-release, like fix up some stuff before I do. But yeah, and then over here is the animation ID. So with these all being the same ID, 721, it's not going to work. I think the first one, maybe one of either the first or the last is going to be the one actually used. It's not going to work. So we want to make sure that there's no repeating IDs. So we're just going to continue the list where it left off. So the last one was 721, so 722, and then 723. And then we just want to make sure this very last line does not have a comma at the end. And then we're going to hit save. So there's no pending changes. We're going to go back to the moat tool unpack that we did. And I'm going to double click on this repack moat.bat. And it's going to do some stuff and then tell you when you see this, like press any key to continue and with no errors, it means we're good. It means it should have created this file here. So it'll always match the name that's in that very first line in the moat list.json. And then it'll be underscored new.moat. If it can't find a file, so let's say we copied the wrong file over earlier and we tried to run it, I just want you to know what to look for. So it runs into an error and then it tells you here, no such file Talum SE6 Talum 183. So that tells us that we need to go find the animation that we didn't copy over and put that in the animation extension folder and then try again. Or, maybe you just did a typo when you were setting up the file. But I'm just going to do it one more time to make sure. Okay. So now we have that animation file all set up. I'm going to rename it. So animation files are CHR0 and then their ID. I know Astaroth is ID 12, but again, in my cheat sheet here, it has all of them. So Astaroth is ID 12. So CHR012. And I'm going to copy that or cut because I don't like having the extras. I have my HDR folder pinned because I access it all the time. But if you're doing this, you're probably not going to have that pinned. So you're going to need to manually navigate to your installation directory. So we're going to go into content, and you're probably not going to have these folders created, so you may need to create one. Unless you have Vodkaverse installed, that's a good way to have these folders already created for you. But yeah, so we're going to go into content and then battle. We're going to go into moat, and we're just going to paste that new animation file we made. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to go back in game and reload Astaroth. And now, because I have the hot load thing installed, it's going to reload the new animation file. It's not going to automatically know that I added those animations because they're not the animations that, or the indexes that Talon normally used. But just a quick and easy adjustment here. So his isn't 414, his is 518. So yeah, we're going to make sure that the new throw we added is the attack, and then we're going to adjust the indexes to match the list, our animation list. So over here at the bottom in tools, in the decimal box, we're going to type 722, and it's going to give us the hex for that. So we're going to take this, and again, it's backwards, so we're going to do the last two first, so D2, and then there's basically an invisible 0 there, so it's going to be, up here, sorry, 0, 2. So we're taking this value and putting it up here, and then since it's a throw, we need to do the same thing in this line we talked about earlier, which is the throw line. So 0, 2, D, and this is going to be that next one, so D3. And I'm just going to hit save. Since we're not pasting an entire script, and in what I modified, there's no pointers I'm going to need to update, I'm okay to just do the attack. Okay, so something went wrong. She's doing the right animation, but we are not. Oh, and that's because I did it wrong. It's D2, not D, or 2D. Okay. There we go. Yeah, and you'll see his weapon movement is following what Talim's does. So her primary weapon is actually in her left hand. So his axe is in his left hand and swinging all sorts of funny because her tonfas do. So using from other styles doesn't always work out. Sometimes you have to kind of play around with it. Technically speaking, you can turn that off, like the weapon movement. So for this particular throw, he kind of uses his hands, like you could get away with not using a weapon. So we could disable the weapon movement. So if we were to go here, oh, nope, that's in Talim's folder. So go back to our animation setup, the moat tool. If you open up the animation that he plays, which is the 172 in a hex editor, the weapon data it has is going to be starting at offset 12. So these 12 bytes are going to be if there's weapon data in, or like weapon movement, excuse me, in the animation. So she has weapon movement data for her first weapon and her second weapon. So each of these bytes would refer to its own weapon. So like Ivy often has all of these filled with a value. So does like 2B because she has so many weapons. Those would be in there. But if you wanted to disable the weapon in the animation, just change all of those to FD, and that tells the game that the weapon should be in the default position. So for Astaroth, it's like this, where it's going to be in his right hand with the center being in between the two. So if we were to save that, I'm going to actually save the move list real quick because we're going to need to reload. So we saved that animation file. I'm going to close it and then back out here and repack the motions again. And then we're going to just go and paste this in that mote folder again in our installation directory and reload Astaroth. So with this change, his weapon doesn't swing around as much. It stays in his right hand the entire time. So clearly, it still isn't going to work as well as it does for Talon because she has two weapons that are swinging directly where you want them to go. But it does make the animation a little more viable for the new style. But there are times where you're just not going to be able to make it work without a lot of extra work, or it's not going to look right. And so some things you just can't use. But yeah, it's kind of the basics on how to copy an entire move. Now, Talon's throw doesn't have anything special as far as like gimmicks. It doesn't activate her wind bearer, but some characters like Cassandra, she has some throws that activate her divine force. So if you were to copy that to a character that also has a gimmick, it can result in some funky stuff happening, be it good or bad, I guess, depending on what you're trying to do. It could activate the gimmick because they often share the same ID in the move list to activate gimmicks. But a lot of times it'll be a little wonky. So sometimes you'll need to go through the move list. What's the input for it? There we go. You'd need to go through and remove that. Either like remove it after you paste it. So for her, we know it's going to be late in the throw because it's at the very end or near the very end when it activates. So you can look through for the frame checks and find kind of a high one. And it's typically going to be group 3, and it's going to be add. So when you see a high add value behind a frame check, that's often what it's going to be. So if you're wanting to see for sure, you can put a 1 or like a high number, change it to a high number here. So instead of hitting it at frame 7-4, so frame 116, instead we're going to hit it at frame 628, which the animation probably, it's not going to go that long. So if we save that and reset, if it doesn't activate, that means that's the right thing that we would need to delete. So then we could reload that and then just take that out. So we'd want to take from the frame check until that next point it jumps to. So it jumps to 0218. And following along, it's going to be that next line right after. So we would delete these 3 lines and then just hit save. And it's going to have that throw, but it won't activate divine force. So then we'd be good to use that on another style without much issue. This throw does activate some VFX on there. It's got the little swirls on her shield when she throws it. That's going to be this line here. And it's from her, it's from her specific VFX list, and we can tell that by this value right here. It's 0, 1, which means that it's her own move list. If it's 0, 0, it's a common one, so copying it would be smooth. But since it's referring to an animation that's in her animation list directly, it wouldn't play anything for another style. So if I were to copy this over to Sophitia, she would still throw the shield, but it wouldn't play that, like it would try to play this VFX, but Sophitia doesn't have it in her list, so it wouldn't play anything. And well, technically we can modify these now. It's a very complicated process that I just don't want to get into. So, you know, that's something to worry about. And then while we're on throws, just real quick, if you're wanting to like add a hitbox, so like let's say as she's climbing up to them, I want another one, like as she steps on their head, maybe another damage. So I happen to know right off the bat that this is the damage block here. So it's behind this frame check, and it's these 3 lines because it jumps to D0, which is underneath here if you're not at frame hex 25. So if I wanted to add another damage, just exactly the same as it was, but let's make it earlier, like I want it to be at 14 instead. I'm gonna copy everything and paste it exactly as it is, and then hit save. And before I do anything, I need to wait for Scuffle to reload. And then before we continue, it struggles with the pointer when you paste. So this is saying that if you're not at frame 14, we're going to jump to 106, but that's jumping over the check that was there and going to this line. So I just want to update this pointer to go to this part that it should be going to, which is D0. So I'm going to change that to 00 D0. And then I'm going to save. So now it has an extra hit. And the way throws work is since it's referring to that throw box, we can call it, in the move list, it's always going to deal a maximum of whatever damage that throw box does, but it just breaks it up into the damage portions you set, and that's going to be done with this line here. So it's saying at frame 20, it's going to deal this damage here, which is 30% of the value for that throw box. And since it's kind of a little thing, I'm going to reduce the damage because I just want it to do a little bit. So now it does 5 instead of the 15 it was doing earlier. And it just makes it like flow a little better, makes it a little more realistic. But it's a little off. I think we want it to be maybe 18. Yeah, it's a little better. No, it's too late. So probably 0E instead. Because I want it like Ashy stepping, so that's still too late. Let's try 0C. That's about right. And no, so this isn't the damage for breaking the throw isn't actually pulled from the throw itself. That's done automatically by the game. I actually don't know where that's set up or how it works. But yeah, it's not something that is actually called from the throw script itself. I think it's probably called by the animation that the opponent enters into, like that, what the animation they do when they break the grab and kind of like stagger backwards. That's most likely where it is damaging them, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the basics of it. We went over animations. I'll go over quickly my Movelist viewer tool, because this has a lot of really helpful scripts, and can break up the move data in something a little easier to digest compared to Scuffle. So I'm gonna open Talim, and I know she's HDR 16. If you see this, you can just ignore it. That's more for my benefit. But yeah, so this is going to be my version of the Movelist viewer. So it breaks things up in the actual integer value. And it has more accurate descriptions on what things are, because over time I've learned beyond what Scuffle is, and I have not been able to modify Scuffle's coding, so that's where it's here. So like let's just go to 263, because I know that's her Talim's A. That uses animation 434, starts at frame 0, ends at frame 0. And it doesn't have a modifier value, which is like that shoulder thing we kind of mentioned a little earlier. And yeah, like the tooltip says, it does something to the animation, and that Taki uses it often. I have no idea. But yeah, so you can't actually edit anything in here. It doesn't let you modify the data. It's purely just to look at, and it's got some helpful scripts up here in the options. But yeah, it kind of breaks down the hitboxes and everything, and something that may be a little easier to read. And then down here is also super helpful, because the encoded boxes down here, unfortunately in Scuffle, they don't work. So what it should be doing is the encoded value for group 3, so hex 33000 is referring to group 3 index 0. And being able to like break these up, because it clearly knows how to, because 3020, it knows that that's move index 3157. Like, it knows how to break up the encoded indexes. It just, the boxes don't work, unfortunately. And there's times where you may need to know the move index of a certain encoded value, or want to know what the encoded value is for a certain index for the loaded move list, and this will tell you what it is. So super helpful to have. But yeah, so the most beneficial thing compared to Scuffle is like over here, you'll need to load the move list before that works, obviously. And then up here in options, there's a lot of really helpful scripts. So we can search by an array of byte. So it'll search every single move that the script or the character has, and it'll search. So if I want to see all moves that play this particular sound effect, right, or whatever I want to search for, I can copy this. So it's going to search all of Talim's moves, And it's probably not even going to find any because this is not, we're not editing Talim, but we'll see. Let's see if Talim uses that same, not that same sound effect, but that index. And she does not. So in all 4065 of Talim's moves, there's none that play sound effect 03FB. So that can be useful information. Let's actually open Talim real quick and we'll just kind of go through an example. So I know that her AK activates her Windbearer. So if I were to look through, again, like we kind of discussed, it's going to be behind a frame check because it's not happening at every single frame. It only happens once. And it's going to be an encoded index. It's going to be add, and it's going to be a high ID number. So it's going to be this line here, most likely. And again, we can test by changing it to a high frame check. And it doesn't have that many frames, so it's not activating. So we know that behind this frame check here is what's activating Windbearer. So if we follow it, it's saying that at frame 2, if it's not frame 2, it's going to jump to 07C, which is that check just below the add line. So we know it's this line here, this code, that activates Windbearer for her. So if we search and paste in that code to activate Windbearer, it says that these 17 moves can activate her Windbearer. So if we wanted to like take away one of them, if we didn't like one of them, we could see which ones activate it. Or, you know, it's just super helpful if you're trying to understand how a certain attack activates it or something like that. It helps us find those. It also helps you search by multiple. So if we want to know if an attack activates Windbearer, so we're going to paste that in. But I also want one that has a voice line, which is this here. So if I want it to also play a voice line, but I don't necessarily want it to be specific. So with voice lines, this is what's telling the game to play a voice line. This is like the category of the voice line. 0013 is like character specific. It's often stuff that's played in their reversal edge or like unique lines that like cast voices don't have. It's going to be kind of behind that most of the time. And then this is the specific index of the voice. But if I just want to know if it plays any voice at all, I'm just going to copy these three because that's what most voices will do. There's some differences, but I want that in there as well. And that's all I want, so I don't need to add another. I'm going to hit OK. So instead of 17, we only have 4 moves. So these 4 moves activate Windbearer, and they also play a voice. So, I mean, that particular example isn't super helpful, but it can be extremely helpful if you have multiple things that you're wanting to find. That's how you can do it. And then it also can search for moves that play a specific animation index. So like 544 plays animation index 372. But if I want to know immediately what uses 373, I can search for that. And it's telling me that move 1195 plays that. 1195 is a pretty high number for something like that. So I'm actually going to type it down here and see, like, try to get some quick info about 1195. So 1195, it does play animation 373, and we can load it here too by clicking up here and typing in that number. It does play animation 373. It's in encoded group 1, which, as I mentioned earlier, if you can keep up with all this nonsense, that's from group 1, which is the intros and outros. So it's probably something related to that. It could be an intro, outro, something or other. Let's say I want to know what it is just to test. I can go to A, replace this animation. I'm also going to make this FEFF, which will play the entire animation, however many frames it has, and then stop. That's what FEFF does for the animation line there. So I pasted the animation index and I changed that. So I'm just going to hit save, and now A will play this animation instead. So 373 is her outro, where she's talking to the wind or something. I don't know what she does. But yeah, that can be helpful as well. And then generate report. These are probably not going to be super useful to everyone, but it's a thing that it can do. So if we were to generate KHD setup, basically just tells the KHD setup is like the file structure. It's all of the stuff in the header of the file, which is this section like right up here. So it's basically just spitting out all of the information up there. So for Talim, she's got 4,065 total moves. She has 1,180 move resizers, which is like the hitbox resizers. That's what helps like verticals stay skinny, or like for Talim's wind attacks, a lot of them don't have an actual hitbox, so it like kind of creates one with the proper size. It also tells us like the offset where her move data ends, which is these. So for like the very last move setup code is going to end at this offset here. The hitboxes are going to end at this offset, throws at this offset. And then it tells us like how many standard attacks she has. So in Vodkaverse, I just padded everyone with a bunch of extra move setups because I want to just be able to go in and add stuff without having to do it every time. So in Vodkaverse, she has 1,176 standard attacks. So that's group 0, which is the stuff you'll actually see in gameplay. In group 1, that's her outros, intros. So the offset for group 1 is going to start at 1176. And that's what tells the game that, like if this was an animation from group 1, from the header, that value says if it's group 1, it's going to start at 1176 and count up from there. And that's what tells the game that this, or like this, is pointing to 10 hex. So that's 16 after whatever group 1's offset start is right here. So for the average user, maybe not super helpful, but was very helpful for me in understanding the moves. You can also dump all move setups, which I forget what does. Oh, it doesn't do anything. Oh, that's just a error that often doesn't actually mean an error. Yeah. So this is saying just quick export of the move setup, which is again this tab here, breaking it down like what animation it uses, what the start frames are, etc. Again, probably not super useful for most people, but it's a thing it does. These can also be very useful if you're wanting to find like unused animation indexes, but you don't want to up or load up the motion charts things that I made. You can use this and it'll quickly tell you. She has a lot of, oh no, that's a different thing entirely, excuse me. These are animation indexes that in the motion chart, or the motion list, excuse me, this guy, like we modified for Ashtaroth earlier. It's saying like for Ashtaroth, these animation indexes all share the same thing, the same animation, which means that these ones don't actually do anything. So I could technically, if I didn't want to add on a motion, I could squeeze something in one of these and it should be fine. I typically don't do that. Since I am able to add stuff now without much issue, I just do that. So this isn't super helpful anymore, but it was before we were able to do that. I do use this one a lot though, unused or reused hitboxes. It's good to know like what moves, if any, reuse a hitbox in case you're wanting to like change stuff up, or if you want an attack to have the exact same properties as a different move, which sometimes you do. That's good to know. Or for me, since I add attacks in a lot, it's good for me to know exactly which hitbox indexes are not used. So for Talim, if I wanted to add an attack, I can see here that hitbox 654 or 028E is currently not used by any attacks in her move list. So I could use that hitbox. I could assign that to a move and it wouldn't cause any issues. Yeah. So these up here all require a move list to be loaded, but these down here do not. So move list injection will allow you to inject move setups, hitboxes, hitbox resizers, or throw boxes, which is like the damage boxes we talked about earlier in the hex, in the file down there. So you can inject more. It'll allow you to inject just blank 0 raw. If you're injecting move setups, you'll more often than not want to do group 0, because that's what's going to be in actual gameplay. But yeah, so injecting to group 1 is not a good idea because I haven't really found out the way to modify the intros, outros, which is why my styles often don't. Group 2 is not a good idea to modify because I don't understand how that works either. I think the hurt refers to like it doesn't match, so if you change that it could end up crashing. Group 3 I will sometimes extend if I'm adding a new character script, like I added a gimmick and I want a quick thing to activate, or if I have like a common VFX. So for lightning, I added one for her gunshots to always just to make it easier so I don't have to add in all those VFX every time. I made a encoded 3 that I do that automatically, and then I just paste that shortcut code. So basically it would be kind of like, where am I? Basically kind of like this. I would paste that in whatever attack has a gunshot, and it would basically add in the VFX for me. I would just have to feed it certain variables like when the gunshot should happen, etc. But yeah, most of the time you're going to want to inject to 0, and you can inject up to 300 at a time. And it'll add those at the end of 0. So right now, you can tell what the end of her 0 is by going to group 1 and just doing like, so, 10, 0. Right now, the end of hers is 1176. But if I load the injected file that this tool just made and refresh this box, it now has 300 before 10 starts. So I could go to 1176 and start building new attacks from that point. Because that was the previous ending. So everything I just added is going to be blank and fresh and good to go. Yeah. Let's see. So all of those kind of work the same. You can also combine animation JSONs. That is going to be pretty helpful if you don't want to copy just like individuals. You want to just do something real quick and easy and just add all animations from another style. So we're going to navigate to that new folder, animation extension. This is Astaroth's folder that we created earlier. So if I select this, it's going to use this as the base, and we'll add whatever Movelist JSON setup that I select. So I'm going to go to animations and move lists, and if I wanted to add all of, let's see, Geralt, right? If I want to edit all of Geralt's animations to Astaroth, I could go in here and select that JSON folder, and it's going to automatically modify that animation folder for me, and it'll let me do more than one if I wanted to, though keep in mind that you can only go up so high before other like common animations will be used. It depends on the style. Sometimes you can only go up to like 200 above where their animation file normally ends. Sometimes you can go up to like 1,000 more. It just depends, and there's not really a good way to know, so you'll just have to kind of figure it out. Yeah, so I combined those. I don't want to add another one, so I'm going to hit no. It'll copy all the files and modify and create a new animation file for me, and then open up where it spits it out. So it's gonna spit it out in wherever you have this tool exe, and it automatically creates it in an animation extension folder like the one we manually created earlier. It's gonna have all of Astaroth's animations normally. It's got a lot of these guys, and then it's got the motion list file the Movelist file it created, and then it copied over all of the Geralt animations that were in the file we selected. And then if we scroll through here, it automatically added all of these to the motion list. It automatically updated the numbers and everything, so we don't need to do anything. We would be able to go to the repack motion and just run it, as long as it's in this folder with the animation extension and everything. So basically you would want this tool and the Movelist that we added here earlier, like these files, you'd want them to all be in the same folder so they just work together really well. But yeah, so it created it here. It's got a new Astaroth animation mote file that's got all of Astaroth's and all of Geralt's in one. And then you can do what we did earlier and just, do the thing. What do you want from me? Okay. It can also correct Movelist indexes. So if you, let's say I did decide later to do just a couple of someone else's style animations. So I'm going to pull, let's say Ezio from SC5. Let's say I only want animations 0 through 20, and I don't want to have all the rest in there and, like bogging stuff down. You'll still need to like manually copy these files over to the folder. Otherwise, when you run the tool, it'll hit an error because it can't find those animations. But then if I open the motion list for Ezio, and I want 0 through 20, that's the ones we copied, so those are the ones I want to add. If I just paste this at the end, I don't need to bother updating those, because if I just go here and click correct Movelist indexes and select that file, it's going to go through and update these numbers to match what they should be based on the list. So it'll automatically do all that for me, and I don't need to manually type in these numbers. And then I could run the repack tool and be good. And then lastly, it's got convert SC5 to SC6. Y'all won't really need to use that because I already did that in the animation dump list, this guy here. It basically just makes it so Scuffle can read it. So again, you can look at it. If you inject it, it's gonna have problems, and like, don't do that. But it'll let you like look over the previous, so you can kind of compare the two, and it makes recreating moves, which is what we have to do. It makes it easier because you can kind of see what it did in 5 and use the new scripts for those functions. So it takes a lot of time to learn what everything does, but I mean, between 5 and 6 and even 4, they use a lot of the same structure, so everything should be in kind of the same order, and it makes it easier. And one quick hack that is very helpful, you can actually use 2 Scuffle setups side by side. So I have one that I have outdated pointers on that I know will not connect to Soul Calibur 6. And that way I can just pull up another Movelist viewer here. So let's say I was recreating Apprentice, like when I did Kestrel, right? If I wanted to copy the attack that's index 210, I could pull this up, and that way I can reference side by side what I'm doing. And you can kind of see it's similar structure, like they both have that same entry script check, which any like check, which is that set A5, or any of these anything where it says state, those should still work in the new engine. But anything that says add, it's referring to a script ID, which is not going to be the same. But you can, even with those adds, as long as you know what the new index is in 6, you can just copy this ending data over and paste it there, just like that. So I know that the index here is wrong because it's 31E from Soul Calibur 4, but it increased by 2 index points in Soul Calibur 6, so it's now 3020. So I can't just copy everything, but if I know that this script is this index in 6, I can copy like the primary data it needs onto the correct index, and it'll work. So that'll work for a lot of things. Like this here is the weapon trail. So I only update one section at a time. So don't be like updating this and then scroll and update something else and continue updating. You need to like do kind of one edit at a time, hit save, and then wait for it to resync and be ready again, and then hit load before you start modifying something else. But I would be able to go through and kind of copy all of this over, kind of one at a time, and then I can copy the next thing that's going to be something useful is this here. This is the tracking for this attack. So I could copy this, reload, scroll down, and paste this tracking information here. And that's going to be super helpful because tracking is really complicated and I don't like it. So if I'm able to like copy that information over directly, I'm gonna. And again, like this information here is the animation speeds. So if you're able to get that information, that's super, super helpful because it's already got the frames that it's supposed to do. It's already got the speeds. And because this is state information and not like the add, it's a system script. So we can just copy that over, directly as it is, we would be able to essentially paste it over this. One quick thing, when you're pasting, you want to make sure your pointer values, whatever they were, doesn't matter, but you want to make sure that they are going to be less than your total script count. So this script goes all the way over up to 038C. So this isn't going to matter. But if the script only goes up to 100 and these pointers are higher, if I hit save, it's going to mess up because it's trying to point to something outside of the script, and Scuffle isn't smart enough to catch that. So sometimes you'll need to go through the pointers of the thing you're pasting and change them to 0 before saving. And then again, wait for it to save and reload everything. And then we'll scroll down to what we just pasted and correct the pointers to work with where it is in the new script. And then we'd save again. But yeah, so it makes recreating things a lot smoother. So instead of having to do everything from scratch, from the ground up, you're able to get most of what actually happens in the move and update it to work with what SC6 is configured to be. So it saves a lot of time. And that's why I don't like doing anything from before SC3, because I'll actually load one so we can see, because I did make converted move lists for things prior. Like Abelia, she's SC3. The moves are a completely different structure. The hitboxes are a different structure. So the information is so much harder to read. Like, it still has this the check, but the data is in completely different it's completely different. It uses these are variable instead of just a simplified script like this. Because this was added in Soul Calibur 4. They streamlined a lot of the process in Soul Calibur 4 for like the back end for the move list, and it makes it so much easier to read, whereas this is, a lot of it is done manually. Like, let's see if it has one. It doesn't. But so for like tech crouch frames in 6, come on. So 1B has some tech crouch frames starting at frame 16 and onward. And that's this line here. So this is the script ID, so it's an add, so it's in our move list, but it's saying 02 is what the tech crouch is. Like 04 is tech jump, for example. So it's saying that we're setting value 02, which is tech crouch, to be between this frame and this frame. 7FFF is essentially infinite. It will keep going. So it's saying from frame 0F and onward, we're supposed to be tech crouch. So it, does all of that in one line. Whereas in Soul Calibur 3, it manually sets 02 at frame 15, so it would essentially be like this A525012800, and then it would set whatever, and then since it goes forever, it wouldn't have another one necessarily, but if it was only until like 001F, like it only had those many frames, it would have another frame check 001F. It would be a multiple frame check. Actually, it would be like this. 00, like this, I think. And then this line would be undoing the tech crouch frames. So instead of a single line to do all the dirty work, it has a bunch of lines and they're not in the right order, and they're all like, it's ridiculous. I hate it. So that's why I don't like to do Soul Calibur 3 stuff in previously, because it's so hard to read. I want to see if actually, oh yeah, this is actually one. So this is a tech crouch. So at frame 6, it turns tech crouch on, and then up here above it, which annoys me because that's not in order. So at frame hex 2b, it turns it off. And so like you can still get some kind of information from it, but it's not good. And like the hitbox is, none of this data is accurate. Like this stuff would be accurate if you can find the new index for the hitbox stuff, but like I don't know when the hitbox actually activates because this isn't it. So it's too much. It's too much work. I don't like it. So anything SC4 and onward is super easy, or easier to use rather. But yeah, so that's like 3 hours of Movelist modding basics. That's a lot. Oh God. Okay, so for this question, the pointers themselves. So pointers are kind of a specific thing that's like the jump point, right? So for a frame check, I'm just gonna open something again real quick. Let's open Talons again. Okay. Okay. So this right here is a pointer. This is a pointer. That's what I call pointers. This is telling the script that it's pointing to this point. So we're going to go to this point. You can also refer to them, I guess, as a jump point or whatever, but I call them pointers. The pointers are always relative to this script. So if you were to add something, like if I were to add a duplicate of this, right? The pointers would then change relative to what the script is then. So I would have to update this to point to this, and I'd have to update this to point to this because that's where they were originally pointing to, and I need to like update that accordingly. As far as these guys, like the script functions, the add functions here, there's not really a good way to learn or to know what the old pointers are. Like I don't even know, right? But I've just been doing this for so long that I can look at a move script from Soul Calibur 4 and onward, and I can identify what it was. Because they all kind of, like I said, they all kind of have that same structure. So they're all often going to have this weapon trail. They're often going to have tracking, and it's going to be weapon trail before tracking. So I can kind of take those visual clues and know like what something is most likely, because you can kind of compare these values to what they are in the other one, and they should be pretty similar, or like similar, you should be able to like identify what it is going to do comparatively. Yeah. So I think that's about all I'm going to cover because my throat is killing me and I want to go to sleep. But yeah, so I'm going to update my my resources eventually to have my Movelist viewer tool. I'll add a zip in here. But yeah, like I'm usually willing to help. So I'd recommend going to the SOM Discord in the movesets tab, because that's where all of some juicy information is pinned, though most of it is now compiled in this one single pin. But it does have some like information. There's some good information in there that's worth going through. Or like this super early scrapped concept of viola. But yeah, so it's just got like a bunch of stuff, but a lot of it is kind of outdated, and most of it is going to be in my Movelist or modding resources folder here that I've kind of created for everyone. And it's got some good stuff in here, like this lethal hits file. If you're trying to add a lethal hit, and those are complicated, I'll be honest, but this will tell you like it has everyone's lethal hits and what the condition is. So I can just quickly scroll through here if I'm trying to add a specific lethal hit, and that way I know who to go to in order to kind of study how that lethal hit works, and then I can go about adding it later. It also has like Movelist animation details, which kind of goes through each of like the early moves or some of, and what they do. So Movelist ID 0 is always their standard neutral. 0-1 is their crouching neutral. 0-2 is down face up, down face down, and so on. So yeah, it kind of goes through a little bit of that, so you can navigate a little bit. But there's a lot of like micro animations, and it's really hard to tell what they do at a glance. And I typically just copy a suitable base when I'm making a style from scratch. So for like Pyrrha, I based it off of Sophitia, I think. I did Sophitia. So it has all of those set up automatically, because modifying all those micro animations to be a different animation is so much work, and I hate it. So I'll copy something that has like the movement I'm after or something like that, and go from there as far as when I'm setting things up. But yeah, so this folder has lots of really nice things. It's also got like VFX notes when you're getting into that. It's got all of the common VFX, so these are VFX that anyone can use, which is super helpful. It's got the like colors to how those glow, or like if your character glows a color, like for revenge, this is the code that would do it. But yeah, it's also got tabs for every character, and their VFX and the code to use it, and so on. And then like information on how they dock. Well, I'll maybe go over this later. There's a lot to VFX. It's kind of annoying. But yeah, lots of good information in that folder. And again, hit up the SOM Discord with questions, and I'm usually happy to help, especially because I know it's a lot to learn, and I've been doing it for 3 years now. So yeah, I mean, thanks for tuning in, guys. I hope this is helpful in some ways.